everyone, welcome to Zonin Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Crunchyroll's English language dub of Gintama Season 3, which they recently began streaming. The dub is notable, especially, for Zonin Canada and what we focus on here, because it was recorded and produced in Vancouver, which is something that we don't really see very often these days with a lot of anime. So for the first segment of this show, I am going to be talking with Michael Daingerfield, who is actually our first Vancouver-based voice actor guest on this show. He's the English language voice of Gintoki in Gintama. He also played Sesshomaru in Inuyasha: The Final Act. He's appeared on Smallville, as well as a number of movies. Michael, thank you very much for coming on, for taking the time to come on the show today.
My pleasure, Jesse. It's great to be here, and I'm glad to be the first Vancouverite actor to be on your show.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're the face of on the mic voice acting here in Vancouver, so it made sense to reach out to you for a number of reasons. So we'll start a bit by talking about Gintama. So I understand these episodes were dubbed a while ago. I know that there was they were reported on the CRTC as Canadian content, so people kind of knew there was something Canadian going on with Gintama for a while, but you guys weren't able to really acknowledge it until the episodes actually just came up a few weeks ago, right?
It was crazy, yeah. We started recording Gintama in late August of 2015, and then we were doing pickups for quite some time, even as recent as a few months ago, I want to say. So they were really waiting to release it. They wanted to have a lot in the can before they released it. They wanted to polish it, make it sound great and look good and everything else. And because I know this was Crunchyroll's first dive into actually doing some dubbing with their content. They hadn't really done that before, and they picked Ocean as the first place to do that. Yeah,
and I mean, Gintama is a very challenging show to begin that to start with too. Yeah. From what I gather, I'm assuming this was your first exposure to the franchise.
It was actually, yeah. I hadn't. The only exposure I'd had was when I was a guest at, I guess it was Anime Evolution, or was it Revolution?
What one of those Vancouver
It's the one.
ones.
It's the one in at UBC. What's that one?
That would be Evolution.
Yeah, so it was at Evolution. I think it was last year, and one of the guest voice actors was from Japan, and he was the voice of Shinpachi for Gintama that they had brought over. So I didn't know anything really about the show. I was just like, and people would say, oh my God, Gintama's huge in Japan. Oh my God, it's just crazy. These guys are like rock stars. And so this guy was brought over, and I talked to him briefly. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then as fate would have it, I was actually shaking the hand of my counterpart in the, which would be the show that I would do like later on. You know what I mean? Like it was just funny timing.
It's funny looking back on that. What was your earliest impression of the show when you finally got an idea of what it was?
Earliest impression was I was just like, wow, this show is so all over the map. Like it's like sometimes there's like really broad and strange educational components, and then there's like really cool like samurai fighting scenes and low key like talks before the fights with really cool music, and then there's like super sexual stuff, and I'm just like this show could not be more out there. It's just so once I started to really get it, then I really started to finally, I don't know, I mean it was definitely a number of episodes in before I really kind of processed and got what they're doing with it. It's kind of like, it's like a more out there version of kind of like Family Guy or something. Like it's like that. Like they're having a lot of fun, but they do a lot of parody stuff. Like in the first episode that we did, which is season 3, which is episode 1, when he's doing the press conference, that's actually based off a real event of one of the, I think it's like a quote unquote senator from Japan who was in a lot of trouble, who did this press conference, and so there's a video you can play where they do them side by side, animation and real live action, and it's like exactly the same.
Yeah, and that was a big deal when that first aired too, because satire is not something that you see done very often on Japanese TV.
Yeah.
And that episode, I think it was the 4th episode of season 4, where you do that history lesson. That was kind of amazing to watch. It didn't seem like something that like a dubbing studio should have even been able to work with at all. And I mean, the end result, I can't honestly say that it sounded natural, but it still worked.
Yeah.
You still got through it. I mean, what was that like?
Well, it's just, I mean, you're just, because you're there and you're trying to, I mean, you do move at a certain pace, right, when you're doing this stuff. So you really are trying to get through it and get the takes done. So, yeah, I mean, you're just trying to find your way and make it sound natural. And it's early on. So you're still kind of getting your feet and your head wrapped around the whole idea of what you're doing, which the character and like, you know what I mean? So it always takes a little bit with any series to get your feel. But, yeah, I mean, it's as it went on, I was like, I really got to know the character quite well. And that's why I'm sort of a little kind of like curious if we're going to do any more, like, because now it's like we go back in, it'll be like putting on a glove, it'll be no big deal.
So I assume that you haven't dubbed anything before the third season at all. It's only that third season.
Exactly, yeah.
And so you've started like over 200 episodes into this show. So how did you tune yourself into the character of Gintoki, especially when you were obviously missing a lot of context and there was only so much you could do about that?
Well, I watched some of the original sub stuff and got a feel for it, certainly, and I had to for the auditions, and a friend of mine Caitlin Bairstow would help me. Had helped me with some of the auditions, because she knew more about the show than I did, and we talked about it, went through some of the video, and so I was able to watch it on Crunchyroll and the original and just kind of get a feel for it. And I mean, to me, it just seemed like the character was, he's very sarcastic and yet, because I mean, I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Like he's super sarcastic and yet he can be very serious and then he can be very angry and very funny, and like he really bounces around. So I think that's one of the reasons I got the role, is because I have a pretty good range of like, not only vocally, but I can do comedy, I can do serious, I can do everything in between and dramatic and all, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all underpinned by this kind of deadpan sort of approach to it as well a lot of the time. Yeah. Can you summarize what like just your average experience of recording an episode of Gintama is like?
Well, we'd go in and it was either Carl Willems or Jack Cox that directed, and we don't know who were the directors on this. So Jack Cox started off directing the episodes, and he probably did at least half of them, and then Carl Willems came on, and I've known Carl for years and years and years. We did Inuyasha together and other series, some prelay like Iron Man and stuff like that. So and he teaches it on the mic, so I know him very well. So there's really quite a relaxed nature to it. Like we're laughing and giggling half the time and telling stories and, just loosening each other up and, and then it's standard dubbing, right? You're just, you do one line at a time and you just make sure that the feel is there. Like it's just, you know what I mean? Like you just kind of get each one. And Jack was great too. Jack helped me get into it in the beginning with the first number of episodes. And even that first episode, we did that press conference scene, which was, it was a bit of a mouthful to get through, right? Because he just goes on and on and on and on and on for, forever. And so, yeah, and I think it turned out actually pretty good, considering it was like, the first thing to get into. But yeah, I mean, the episodes are fun because we just sort of know that it's going to be so out there, and so let's just go for the ride and do a good job. You know what I mean? Like,
do you ever understand any of the references that come up as you're kind of muscling through
some
these
of them?
episodes?
Yeah, some of them, but definitely less than more.
Yeah,
for sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm sure even people who are hardcore fans of this show, like they won't admit it, but like they probably don't understand all the jokes either. Yeah. It's a pretty dense show.
I think what I did get was because we always listen to the original prior to doing the dub, and I would always hear in the actor's voice that did it, I can't remember his name, but I'd always get a feel, and so that's what I started getting was the feel, right? Like just for where the line lived and where it was, and so that became more important to me than sometimes knowing the reference or whatever else, right? Like just getting the feel right.
Yeah. You were absent for a number of episodes in the early set of season 3 with the gender swap storyline that happened.
Yeah, I think it was 3 or 4 or something. I can't remember, but yeah, there was. I know that's the thing. Like this show just goes in like so many directions. It's like Monty Python, and right, like it's crazy.
Yeah, they added a reference to your name in like the on-screen text in there too, because the original text referenced the Japanese voice actor, so they changed it to you, and I'm like, oh, it's good that they did that.
Oh, I didn't know they did that.
They did,
what
yeah.
Episode that was in the gender switch one?
Yeah, I think like the preview for it or something like
hilarious.
that. Yeah, they said like Michael's going to be away for a few episodes. Yeah. Who was do you know who the voice of the female version of Gintoki was in those episodes?
I asked, and I don't think I ever found out. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they haven't released. There's no credits attached to these episodes for the English voice acting, so it's just they posted like a list of the core cast, and that's really all we know.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get more information, like when there's.
Well, I'd like to know who the female me is. I mean, that's important to know.
I think they're planning a DVD or Blu-ray release for it. So
are they? Oh, okay.
We'll probably get full credits when we see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just talking about your other work. How did you first get into acting, and specifically working in anime?
Well, I got into acting as I started doing stand-up comedy in university, and then I finished university, and I was like, geez, I have this degree in business and marketing, and it's like I don't think I really want to do that and sit in an office, and so I basically went to Toronto and crashed in my aunt and uncle's place, and got a job and started auditioning, and then my first job was the voice of Ace Ventura on the animated series, impersonating Jim Carrey, and it was a big show, and it was huge. I mean, for me to get that, my first thing in, and then I kind of never really looked back. I just got it more into commercials and narration. Of course, I got into on camera, and that started flowing as well, and anime didn't really come until I came to Vancouver, which was in 2000, and I finally got proper representation in like 2002, and Ralph over at Red Talent started getting me over to Ocean, and before long I was starting to do different types of shows. I didn't do anything yes I did. What am I talking about? It wasn't just at Ocean, because that's right, in like 2002 I started doing Transformers. And so I did 3 different Transformers series and stuff like that, and then I moved on to some of the Ocean stuff, doing like Gundam, and then Inuyasha came, and you know what I mean, stuff like that.
Yeah, and you were in Gundam 00,
yeah,
I believe, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So probably one of your bigger roles before this was as Sashomaru in Inuyasha: The Last Act.
Yes.
Of course, it was David Kay who did the voice before that. He's now on the Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. He's the narration voice on that show. Since he's so when you were doing that role for that last season of Inuyasha, like how did you approach Sashomaru? Did you just opt to just imitate David Kay, or find your own interpretation of the character, or a mix of the two?
I wanted to stay true to what David did in terms of that character. Like I wanted to try to have the character live through, because I'm a pretty good voice match, so I thought, well, I think I can kind of do it. So I felt I was close enough to what he was doing, and then I did sort of develop my own kind of, thing with it. But people seemed to be pretty happy. They were certainly concerned before they saw it, because they were like, oh no, what do you mean? Sashomaru's not David.
Okay.
I was getting emails, and people were putting comments on different YouTube videos I had, and they were like Snake Eyes, I hate you for, taking over Sashomaru and all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was cool. I've been to some cons, and people have expressed that they're quite happy with it, and I thought it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it all turned out pretty well.
That was also with Carl Willems, so he was directing that as well. Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about on the mic training. So can you kind of explain what it is and what inspires you to get that rolling here in Vancouver?
Well, it all started like 10 years ago, and I just started teaching by myself, because I was like, I think I can do this. I think I can teach a voiceover class, and do a 4-week class, one night a week for 4 weeks, and people can come in and learn the basics, do a sort of a foundations course, commercials, animation, and narration, and because I have experience in all three of those avenues. And it started out very small and very basic, and then before long, I was sort of doing one class a month or one every other month for a few years, and then I think it was in 2011. I just was like, wait a second, this is crazy. Why am I not having more instructors on my team at On the Mic, that I branded as On the Mic Training? And so I got about 5 more instructors on board, and then we had a full kind of operation going over at this other studio, and it's called Studio X Labs at the time that we were operating out of. And then we went to another studio called Cosmic, which is where I've done a pile of prelay shows like, Droid Tales, like Lego Star Wars Droid Tales. I've done like Leapfrog, Barbie series, Nerds and Monsters, Nexo Knights, all these shows that I'm doing right now, or that have done, were there, Ninjago. And so we went to that studio, and it worked out quite well there. It was a beautiful studio, and we were like, yeah, this is where we want to be, and we were continuing to grow. And then my business partner, Noel Johansson, and I, who he came on as a full partner in the past year, realized that we need to have our own space. That's what we've got to. We've grown so big that there's no sense in us renting studio space at someone else's place. Let's get our own spot. So we have our own spot and have for about the last 6 or 8 months. And it's really exciting because, we're just continuing to grow and doing more things and getting into, we're offering singing classes now, and we're going to get into songwriting classes, and because it's a full, studio that we can offer our classes out of. It's a full state-of-the-art studio, right? It's beautiful.
You guys are down in Gastown.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, nice location.
It's like, well, yeah, it's actually pretty cool because it's right across the street from Bryan Adams' studio called The Warehouse. Mm-hmm. And I've worked at The Warehouse probably 40 times. I did a series called Ice Pilots there. We did 2 or 3 seasons out of there, and I've done a bunch of commercials with Roger Harris. And, so I know the studio quite well in the area. So part of me wants to go across the street one day and be like, yes, Brian, do you have a cup of sugar for me there? That would be fantastic, Brian. Yeah, Stewie.
Yeah. So this is just something I've kind of noticed over the past, decade or so. Let me ask you, do you find at On the Mic, are there a lot of people who come in with the specific desire that just to do voiceover for anime and nothing else? Because I from my obviously more limited perspective, I've seen a lot of people who have that kind of aspiring voice actor perspective, but they're not necessarily interested in doing other forms of acting. Do you find that is a trend, or?
It definitely happens sometimes, but I always just say to people like, look, you're crazy not to sort of be a multitasker when it comes to voiceover, because, why would you want to get into just one avenue when you could do more than that? And that's kind of how you survive, really, and how you make your living, because, you bounce around and you just do whatever you can. You just do whatever you can. And as a result, it makes you better for all the things that you do anyways, right? Because I learned things by doing dubbing for my prelay, and I learned things from prelay for my commercial stuff, and I learned things from commercials for doing narration, and from narration I learned stuff for promo, and it all is connected, right? It's all storytelling. And so, yeah, the odd time it comes in, and especially, we have a dubbing class at On the Mic that's taught by Jack Cox, actually, who directed me in Gintama. So it's a really unique opportunity and experience for people to come in and learn from an industry director in a beautiful state-of-the-art studio and at a school that, we feel like we're telling you like it is. This is what the industry expects, and but we have a ton of fun. It's very loose, but it's also very real. Is the way we approach it.
Just going back to Gintama, this is one of the first, kind of mature, non-toy commercial anime shows that's been recorded in Vancouver for quite a while. Does this make any difference in like the way that you and other local actors approach the material, or is it just sort of a lot of the same procedure?
It's the same procedure, but at the same time, it's kind of fun because you do really get to let loose and laugh, and because, you're doing stuff where, I don't know if you've seen any of the episodes, but, there's that one character, it may not have come up yet, but there's this sort of human-sized cat character that literally, has a bowel movement there where it looks like a smoke screen coming out of the the butt of this life size or this human size, man sized cat. And I don't know, there's everything from, feces to sexuality to cool samurai stuff to super sarcastic, like that one character that Andrew Francis plays, that he's laughing like, ah ha ha, ah ha ha. Like, do you know that character I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, I don't know. I just hear that stuff and it just makes me laugh, so I do feel like for us, we do get to laugh a little bit more because it's, like you're seeing stuff and saying things that is very funny.
Yeah. I can't imagine that Gintama leaves a lot of room for anything like improvisation, though.
No, but I would. I mean, anytime there was any mouth not seen stuff that I could get away with, that maybe it was a monologue or like, I would definitely, any chance I get, I always try to like, hey, Carl, how about this? Boom, boom, boom. How about this, Carl? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, let's try it. So, yeah, I mean, you can't take too many liberties, especially when it has to match the flaps, right? Because it's all timed out, right?
So I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this at all, but Gintama is one of the first major anime to come out of Vancouver studios in quite a while. Can anime fans expect any more output in the future? Or
yeah, no, I think there is. I think there's definitely stuff coming down the pipe for sure. I really can't say, but I think that I do believe that this was a test run for Crunchyroll to try this out with their content with an English dub with Gintama. So we're all sitting there saying, well, geez, maybe they sure have a lot of content. Maybe they're gonna, because on the first episode the execs came in to the first episode record. And they were great, by the way. I mean, they were just super chill and like, session was rolling along and it was fairly new to some of them because they hadn't really done it. They hadn't sat in on a voice record and gotten a feel for it. But really, they gave me some swag from Crunchyroll and they were pretty easy going. It was nice to have them there.
Great. Well, we'll see what comes of that then.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Michael, I think that's pretty much all I have. Where can people find you online?
Well, they can find me at @mdangerfield, Daingerfield Field on Twitter. And,
yeah, don't forget the I.
Because some people don't spell Dangerfield without the I, and then or with the I, and then it's they will never find me. So it's mdangerfield on Twitter, and please follow. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and check us out at onthemictraining.com for classes for those of you that are close to Vancouver. And in the Vancouver area, classes are monthly and they're going on all the time. We got, events happening, free events. There's auditions. You can actually go to the website and sign up and be a subscriber. Just if you just scroll to the bottom, I think, of every page we have, and put your email address in there and be a subscriber and keep in touch. Yeah. So, but I will be, like I said, I'm going to be probably. I'll be surprised if I'm not at one of the cons also this summer. Probably, what's the one at the convention center?
So there's Anime Revolution at the Vancouver Convention Center. Any other Canadian cons you might pop up?
Well, I may go to Toronto as well. There's a good possibility. I know, like I said, I mean, I've been already contacted by a couple already, and I think people are interested, about the Gintoki character, and it's been cool. Yeah, it's been cool to receive some attention. It seems like people are liking it on social media as well.
Yeah, it's had a great reception so far. I think people are going to be really excited to talk to you about that. Michael, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot.
Hey, Jesse, you know what? It's a real pleasure. I'm glad we're able to do this, and just break a leg with everything you're doing, and I'm sure we'll see you sooner than later out there on the campus of Boys Sober.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, take care, man.
Hey, so for the second segment of this episode, we're going to be doing a little feedback discussion on the Gintama dub itself. Now, personally, I'm not really well versed in Gintama. I haven't seen a lot of it, so I brought on someone who is a little more familiar with it than I am. A friend of the show, Patrick McLafferty. Patrick, thanks for coming on.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, so neither of us has really had time to watch through all 50 episodes, but we got enough to kind of get a taste of what they're doing and how it's gone with that production. So they started about 265 episodes in, which kind of makes this an interesting situation. Just Patrick, based on what you've seen of it, what's your take on the how well the actors have assumed the roles?
Well, so far, I enjoy what I've seen of it. I've gotten for about 20 episodes of it. So
okay.
So got most of the actors have a good handle on the character, it seems, so far.
Yeah.
And you can tell they have good interplay with each other, which helps.
I find overall it's really well cast. Usually with ocean dubs, I find they take a little while to get going. But here, everyone seems to be really in character from the get-go. I bet in the interview, Michael Daingerfield said that he watched a lot of the earlier episodes and did prep for the character, and I think it shows. I think that they've kind of stepped into these roles and assumed them well, and it's It's especially impressive because they're not only 265 episodes in, but they also constantly reference the fact that the show has been running this long. Also, this is the first Vancouver dub that we've heard in quite a while for at least a non-toy toy commercial kind of anime. And I think that even if people are not familiar with Gintama or the franchise in general, I think there's a lot of people who are probably going to find it very satisfying to listen to the Crunchyroll dub for that reason alone. You'll hear voices like Andrew Francis and Chantel Strand and even Scott McNeil pop up. And just another thought, I'm also very happy that they avoided the temptation of giving Kagura a stereotypical Chinese accent, which is something I have found that Vancouver studios seem to have a bad sort of reputation for. Patrick, did you ever see the dub that Sentai produced for the first movie a few years ago?
Yes, that was disappointing for most of the actors on that.
How does it compare overall? Like, what was the approach like in that dub? I haven't seen that one myself.
They were horribly miscast with like a very small pool of actors, which didn't help.
Yeah.
Some of them sounded like they give Kagura a bit of an accent, which kind of was. Although Kagura was one of the few decent parts in that. Kagura was fine, and the lolicon guy, I can't think of his name at the moment, that shows up occasionally.
How did they handle like references and stuff like that? Did they play it straight like they do in this dub, or did they try to localize it to some extent?
Some things they localized, some things they didn't.
Yeah.
And the thing is that they took the beeping to be cursing.
Yeah, that's one thing in the Crunchyroll dub. They recreate the beeps, but I guess being Sentai, they couldn't resist throwing in as much swearing as they could.
Yes. Well, the beeps in the Crunchyroll and the Japanese version is the beep references.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. For references. Right.
So, for example, they did Captain Harlock reference in Sentai dub. In the Japanese version, it was the Captain Harlock reference, but it says I'm the mother effing Captain Katsura.
Oh, I see. Right. So they turned. It was originally a bleep for a reference, but they reconfigured it into something else for the.
Yes.
I see. Yeah.
They just did all the extra obscenity. I mean, there is obscenity in the series, but it's not.
I see. So they're trying to they maintain the humor of just having the beep there, but they change the reason for needing the beep. I guess that's kind of interesting, but I can see that like failing really horribly, especially when you have the Sentai style of dubbing it. Yeah, obviously that seems to be a mixed bag.
I say this particular problem with Sentai dub is the leads.
Yeah.
They had Chris Patton as Gintoki, which he kind of had the deadpan right for the role, but that's about it. And Kagura was Kagura, but the front was Shinpachi was. I don't know if you've seen he's the usual straight man in anime comedies, but sometimes he's really screechy. The Japanese version is kind of part of the comedy. He's really screechy. They took it up even further. I mean, that's what the problem was. The Ocean dub had the right balance of it.
What's interesting though, in the Ocean dub, and I think what makes it like really unique as a dub in general, is that it is not a localization at all. In fact, it almost seems to go out of its way to not be one. As someone who has like watched, I guess, most of the show and has a feel for the references and how it goes, did Did you find did it feel natural to you, the
Most
way
of
it
the
plays
time.
out? Yeah.
I only noticed 2 localizations at all. They changed Mulder to Earthbound, and they mentioned Michael for Gintoki's actor because they mentioned it was Sugita, Tomokazu Sugita for in this figure when they did the gender swap.
Yeah. That was a nice touch, but it was a necessary one. And the Earthbound one is just logical, because the franchise has a different name here.
They did seem to be natural. I mean, most of the references seem natural.
You know, the actors, you can kind of tell they don't have a lot of context for what they're talking about a lot of the time. That they're going through all this stuff, but they have this sense of just utter conviction behind their performance. I found kind of made up for it. And did you find that effective?
Indeed.
Yeah. It's a weird balance. Like, this is a really unique dub in that sense. It's almost kind of like an experiment. It's like if you can just put as much sincerity and meaning behind something, even if it doesn't make sense or you don't understand it, you can still sell it and make it. I hesitate to call it natural, but as something that still works. That's also kind of brings into question like the whole function behind it. This is a little harder for I guess. I'm curious, what do you think? Do you think that this dub would be a way that you could actually sell the show onto people? Do you think people could watch this dub and gain interest in it, or do you find it could only be like a sort of a bonus extra?
I think maybe it's too much at this point. It's too much of an extra. If they start slightly before, I mean, like they did from the second series on, the 2011 series, and went from there, it might have been better because that's where most of the strongest material of the series is at. I mean, these are all good episodes. Most of these are good episodes, but I think it's just at this point that I do know a bunch of people actually are trying out for the first time because of the dub. I've seen it around in a few places.
Yeah, before I've only seen like the first handful of episodes of Gintama subbed. It didn't really get my attention. I didn't find it to be anything too special, and I'm familiar with the central cast. Going into this new dub, I'm skipping forward like 200 episodes. I found it funny. I really did. I found it a lot more engaging than my previous experience with Gintama had been, or everything I had seen before that. So I don't know if it's because there's anything different in the way things were depicted in the dub, or just because the series had improved so much. I guess here's kind of one of the challenges here. How initiated should someone be before they jump into this dub? Like, is it really necessary to watch all 200 episodes? Are there certain sections of the show that are musts? There seems to be a lot of mixed opinions on that.
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I usually go say watch the first 13 or 26, and then at that point you can kind of skip around. I mean, it's better to watch it all, but you can watch a lot of standalones at that point.
Any particular ones that stand out? What are your favorite arcs?
Well, arcs I actually am for favorites standalone episodes. I had written down numbers because Mike Tool was asking for episode suggestions. I should have brought that tweet up with the numbers, but I know with 119, I believe the number is, it's basically, which should be good if they actually dubbed that one. It's a parody. It's Ijikata tries to quit smoking because cigarettes are banned in Edo. So he has to go leave Earth to go to planet Namek for cigarettes. And it goes from there.
Yep. That's actually another good point for why this, I think the Vancouver cast worked really well, because in the third season, it's really heavy in the Dragon Ball Z references, right off the bat.
Oh yeah, and I was glad to see Scott McNeil as Piccolo-ish guy.
We haven't, Scott McNeil he's a pretty rare to hear in any voice acting now. So I was glad to hear him back, especially,
I caught him 3 times.
Yeah.
The male Kagura, that was the best part of that arc.
Yeah, he plays the male Kagura in the gender swap arc, which is pretty much everything that you would hope that would be. It had me laughing pretty hard. And I'm sure he pops up more, but it's
and the only one I caught was him as the mad scientist.
again, if you're a fan of Vancouver voice acting, there's a lot of fun little surprises like that in it. And it's also kind of bizarre hearing Vancouver voice actors make like super specific anime references to like, you know, To Love-Ru and stuff too. It's a little disarming sometimes, but it's an experience for sure. One thing I did want to point out, just in terms of this not being a localized, like just going out of its way to like not localize the material. I don't know about you, but I feel that there was some missed opportunities for meta humor. Just like, you know, there are times when, you know, they really could have like added to the jokes and point out how obtuse or obscure certain things sound in English. But they really seem to resist that a lot of the time. They wanted to keep the references, you know, as straightforward as possible. I guess with the expectation that people would understand them, even though I personally question anybody who insists that they understand all the references in Gintama. Because it's so dense.
About 50-50. About 50-50 usually.
Yeah.
I don't recognize all the celebrity jokes all the time.
Yeah.
Or the politics jokes.
Yeah. But that whole thing, it kind of, like, it makes me wonder about the actual practical function of the dub. Because, like, obviously this is Crunchyroll's first foray into doing their own dubbing, and I don't know how much more we'll hear of it because they have their deal with Funimation now to handle a lot of the dubbing. It seems like the actual function of this dub is not to make it more accessible, but just to be able to, or to allow people just to be able to put it on in the background while they work on other things. And I have to say, I kind of appreciate that, because usually when you're watching anime, it's hard to multitask because of the subtitles. But then when you have this dub that's just super, super literal, but also like really sincere and accurate and everything, I'm just like, oh, this seems to recreate the experience well enough. I can read this important document on my phone while I'm watching this. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, what do you think? I guess we already kind of covered this, but I mean, do you think there's any other kind of practical reason to have a dub like this, or do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Not really. I think it's nice to exist. I mean, nice for people. Says I don't want to watch it because there's no dub. I mean, I've heard that as well. So at least I know even though it's 260 odd episodes in.
Well, I guess I'm sitting here questioning whether or not it's going to get people interested who wouldn't have watched it before, and that's clearly happened. So I guess just even if it's just a stunt, it's kind of worked. But it's still such a baffling project that they would take on such a huge show and try and do a dub like this. I have to give them props, but I still don't really understand what they're trying to achieve with that. Also, just in terms of like functionality, I was kind of disappointed that the dub was just on Crunchyroll on a separate file compared to the sub version. That doesn't really seem necessary since they're soft subs. So it's why have two different videos? That's like a real Funimation kind of thing to do. Were there any particular episodes you thought were strong and any ones that were weak?
Well, the ones I watched, strong ones. The Saint Seiya episode. I don't know if you saw that one.
I don't think I made it to that one. No.
It's basically they're telling ghost stories. It all turns out to be Saint Seiya.
Yeah.
Which does end with the recreation of Soldier's Dream. So that's the actual end theme of the first end theme of Saint Seiya.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
That was a strong one. I also think the Earthbound one with the. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that one, yeah. That
Yes.
It's one of those sort of sequences where I'm just like, wow, like I don't think they understand what they're talking about, but man, they are selling it as well as they can. And I mean, the end result is something that I found really funny. It worked, I guess. Were there any episodes or like segments that you thought just like did not work at all?
Not in what I watched.
No? Yeah.
I mean, actually, there was one thing. I didn't chance to watch the entire thing of it, but the body swap arc. It didn't seem enough to differentiate the voices for Gintoki as Hijikata as Gintoki and Gintoki as Hijikata. unfortunately, Michael Dangerfield and Michael Adam. Wait, I guess that's how they say his name. Unfortunately, they sound too much alike, and it's kind of made. While that would work for them being switched, it just did not do enough to differentiate that. So, it kind of made a middling arc just kind of not work as well. But basically, the actors for the characters in Japan, it just seemed to actually get down the voice mannerisms down well. I guess since they've been doing it for 10 years at that point, working together.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, when they're jumping into this 256 episodes in, or 265 episodes in, yeah, it's like you can't.
They're fine. They're fine in the other episodes. Just that those episodes in particular doesn't really work.
Yeah, I hear people talking a lot about just sort of the working relationship that the Japanese voice actors have, and that seems to play a lot in just how the original plays out. Or am I wrong about that?
You're pretty correct.
I guess there's one thing I have to point out, and I don't know if this is anything you'd have an opinion on, but you've no doubt heard that in Canada, Crunchyroll doesn't make most of their back catalog available to non-subscribers. Have you heard about that?
I've heard about that.
Yeah. I think it's awesome that they're sending work to Vancouver. I hope they continue to do so. In fact, one of the fact that they did this segment of Gintama means that, if they do more, they're probably going to send it up here and work with these voice actors more, and I think that would be a really positive thing moving forward. But I have to point out the kind of hypocrisy in the fact that they, on one hand, are obviously setting it up here to save money because it's a high volume of episodes and getting the work done in Vancouver is cheaper compared to like LA. But at the same time, they're also, not letting Canadians access their back catalog to also save money. And I don't think they're doing that anywhere else on Earth. There's something a little skeevy about that, I have to say. I mean, have you heard the news today that Crunchyroll has been cutting, or from the last few days that they've been cutting picture quality on their streams apparently?
So it wasn't just my imagination.
Oh, did you actually notice that?
Not drastically, but it just seemed a little off.
Yeah, they actually have just started. They reduced their bit rate on all their streams. It's still high quality if you watch it for 24 hours, but after that, the picture quality goes down, and apparently it's quite noticeable to most. And there's been a bit of a shitstorm going on about it in Reddit and things, and their frontline PR people don't actually really understand what's going on because it's a cost cutting decision that's kind of been made over their heads.
It's like their firing of all those people.
Yeah, the firing of their engineering staff too. There's honestly some pretty shady or pretty questionable things going on at Crunchyroll, and they should be criticized for it. But the problem is that when you criticize Crunchyroll, I always feel like you're kind of enabling pirates, because when you say something bad about Crunchyroll, people will pop up and say, "Oh well, we better just go pirate anime again. This is the perfect like it's the perfect excuse or something." I find that kind of frustrating, but I think that's the wrong reaction to people criticizing Crunchyroll. But I think that the people need to be able to be more critical about those kinds of things without necessarily encouraging the reaction of turning to piracy. That's just one of the little frustrations with that going on right now.
Yeah, when I was watching this picture doesn't look as bright and looks fuzzy in places.
Yeah.
As I was noticing it.
Yes, yeah, it didn't even need to be pointed out to you, and you noticed. So
I thought it was that they switched over to a different resolution on the iPad.
Yeah, no, it's a site-wide thing. So I guess if you don't like that, make sure they hear about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's about all I have. Patrick, anything else you wanted to end on?
Just try to dub, try the sub for the older episodes as well, or the newer episodes for that matter. Yeah,
if nothing else, it has ignited my interest in the series, so I'm probably gonna check out more.
As hopefully, if they release the second movie, it's dubbed in Canada.
Well, or redub the first movie too. That'd be great.
That's true.
We haven't seen that second movie yet, have we?
No, or some of the OAVs either.
Oh yeah. Well, potentially a lot of work ahead. for voice actors in Vancouver. So keep our fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Patrick.
No problem.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for tuning in. The theme song is by Ultraclystron. You can purchase it as part of his album Packet Flood at ultraclystron.com. You can reach me through Twitter @ZonNCanada or email zonNCanada@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or your podcast app of choice. And as always, please recommend the show to anyone you think might be interested. See you again.